We're good. Hey, Dr. Ellis, we're here with Dr. Carl Ellis. We are in the home office, the offices of Jesse Carbo, Executive Director of City to City Miami. He was kind enough to let me set up here while the kids are in school, and that means at home, and that means the home office is not a home office anymore. So I have a question for you, Carl. I posted this on social media. One of the questions came in on Facebook, and it says the following. We won't say the whole name, but this is from Lewis. So Lewis, we got you, bro. There seems to be a willingness to align with, left-leaning secular Black voices and organizations like Black Lives Matter on the issue of race, yet little to no interaction with Black voices holding the opposite view. I have in mind here Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Glenn Loury, John McWhorter, and others. If true, what are the reasons for this? And by the way, for future episodes, look to the Lance Word Facebook group. We will be posting an opportunity to ask questions. Your questions will be asked to those we interview. So Dr. Ellis, again, some voices are heard, some voices are not. What's the reason for that?
I think that goes back to, well, let me just say this. I attribute it to groupthink, okay? Now, groupthink, how did it develop? Let's go back, let's say 50 years. So that puts us at, that puts us at about 1970. Let's go back maybe longer than that. Let's say 70 years. Go back to 1950, okay? All right, what was the scene in 1950? 1948, 1950. First of all, you had, the South was solid Democrat, okay? And these are segregationists, you know, and of course in 48 you had Strom Thurmond running for president as a Dixiecrat, you know, the Dixiecrat party, right? Because they were segregationists, all right? So these people, these segregationists, they were actually far right people. Now I make a distinction between, okay, I say there's the far right, is that right? Does that work right for you? Yeah, the far right, the conservatives, the liberals, and then the far left, okay? Now, these people were far right, but they call themselves conservatives. So the real conservatives were under the domination of the extreme group, the far right. And so the real conservatives, you know, they were just kind of just drowned out. They never, their voices never surfaced because they were dominated by the far right. Well, it was the far right policies that Black people were fighting against, okay? Now, here come the liberals. Now, in those days, the liberals were, they were the dominant group on the left. The far left, they were few and far between. The liberals also opposed the policies of the far right. So what happened is that the civil rights leaders and the liberals had a natural alliance, you know, because they were both fighting the same thing. So in the minds of a lot of Black people, the liberals were the good guys, the conservatives were the bad guys, all right? Okay. That's like, in computer language, that would be like DOS 1.0, okay? Okay, then it continued on, so throughout the civil rights movement, the liberals were the good guys, the conservatives were the bad guys. But during the 60s or so, 50s and 60s, the conservatives freed themselves from the domination of the far right with the help of people like William Buckley and others. Okay, William Buckley. He liberated the conservatives from the domination of the far right. And of course, today the far right has become a fringe group. There are a few far right folks you find out there are mostly in northern Idaho and places like that. I mean, there's some that pop up here and there, but generally speaking, the conservatives, the real conservatives, they're not these segregationists. They're not these racists that we. But see, in the minds of a whole lot of African Americans, in terms of groupthink, you still think of conservatives as racist, segregationists, and all the rest of that.
And that's
what happened. Huh?
Just to clarify, they think that because conservatives would have been lumped in with those on the far right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And so even though they're separated from those on the far right now, because they were then, that brand has attached itself to them.
That's right. They're tagged with the reputation of the far right.
Gotcha.
So when you have African Americans coming along, allowing themselves to be identified as conservative, you see what that looks like. It looks like these are Uncle Toms and they're traitors to our people.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
But what's happened on the left side, though, is in the intervening years, once the liberal goals have been accomplished, what began to happen is that the far left has risen up and it's become the dominant voice there. The liberals, the real liberals, the classic liberals, they're drowned out. It's the far left, but the far left knows how to speak the language of the old liberals, and so it still sounds right, but actually it's poisonous beneath. Now there's a lot of African Americans that are waking up to this, and they're saying enough. It's a matter of fact. Thomas Sowell and McWhorter and Walter Williams and Bob Woodson and others are gaining in popularity especially among young African Americans. So the groupthink is starting to dissolve a little bit. Watch what happens in this next election. As much as Trump is, vilified in the left-leaning media, I would not be surprised if Trump doesn't get a sizable, so maybe 20%, maybe, of the black vote, because people are starting to see through all that rhetoric. Now, not that I'm a fan of Trump's, but I'm just saying that there is a breaking with that groupthink, and it's taken a while. So, the final thing is this: people who consider themselves conservatives don't know how to communicate. The people who are on the left, they know how to communicate. They know how to use the language, and so I think it's unfortunate that people like Walter Williams and others have been tagged with the label conservative. I think there's something else. Actually, something else. They're not really. But if they are, I mean, they do say some good things. I mean, conservatives do say some good things. I don't have a problem with it, but it's just a perception issue.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Thank you for answering that question. And I'm going to take one last break and then get some final thoughts on what's happening today in America and if there's anything we can do about it.